My name is Cheryl Erickson and I'm the Indigenous focused ECE instructor with Louis Riel Vocational College. Today in Chapter 3 we'll be exploring intellectual and social development and how that affects discipline of young children. But before we get started, just a reminder to read Chapter 3 as this video is not a replacement of your daily readings. So we know that children's thinking is very different from adult thinking. And we received that information through theorist studies of children in various situations. And in particular, Jean Piaget and his theory regarding how children develop. So we know that children have limited experiences, and with those limited experiences, they don't always know or have the ability to reason effectively. And so children's understanding will vary with their age as well. So reasoning skills with a 2-year-old are almost non-existent, where reasoning with a 4-year-old, they will have gained some experience and some understanding. And so we want to look at where children are intellectually and as well as socially when we're providing appropriate guidance for children. So we'll take a look at and explore some more information here. So when it comes to children and conception of rules, Piaget's believed that young children thought rules were involatile and because they are imposed by adults. So often in the preschool years, it's been noticed that preschoolers seem unconcerned by rules. And I can speak to the fact that 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds usually seemed very unconcerned about rules. But usually once they get to the 4 and 5 and then up to the primary ages, rules become very important to children. And so often you're more successful with children of these ages too when you help them create the rules. And they also feel bound to follow those rules. So children, do need some opportunities to be a part of that creative process. And it also empowers them to act on those rules. I also can speak to the fact that often older preschool children will reiterate the rules in certain social situations because that's how important they feel rules are. If you're going out of bounds as far as the rules, they're always very quick to remind you regarding those rules. So that, usually in the older, starting around 4, rules become important. Vygotsky had a theory, and it was called the zone of proximal development. And so basically within this theory, it does recognize that young children's thinking is different. And again, as children gain experience, they gain some knowledge. And so younger children's thinking is different from older children's thinking. However, in certain situations, adults can scaffold children's thinking by learning. So we can walk them through different scenarios or different teachable moments to help them achieve success in completing a task. However, they'll only be successful if we're doing that with them. They wouldn't be able to do it on their own. And it also has a lot to do with the opportunity to think about feelings of others in social situations too. Until you have that understanding of perspective taking and how other people feel in similar situations, or have that empathy to understand how other people feel, it's really, you're very limited in how you're going to guide children. So we want to help that scaffolding process and offer those teachable moments to children to help them better understand how things work or how to appropriately guide them. Being selfish and sharing is a very common occurrence in a childcare center, sharing is hard. Sharing is hard, especially if it's something that is only meant for one person. So we can't, you can't learn to share or be generous if you're forced to do that. That's going to come naturally. And also that's one of those things that could be really taught in that zone of proximal development that we spoke of a few minutes ago, Vygotsky's theory. And so us as adults can share with children, and that's a part of scaffolding. To teach them how to do so. So, we can share snacks with them. We can share a game or a toy with them. However, it's going to depend on the types of materials that you have. And you should have a range of things that children can play with independently, as well as materials that are going to promote that sharing and teaching children how to share. Children are typically egocentric, and when I say that, it's, they view the world as them being the most important thing within that world or within that environment. So you think about a preschool environment that has, say, 30 children that could be very egocentric. You're going to always have some conflicts, but that's okay. That's normal development, and that's where we're practicing those guiding techniques. So children need help learning to view situations from another's point of view, and again, that's the perspective taking, and that really doesn't come into play until children are about 4 years old. Within that development. So again, you're always going to have that conflict. It helps children tie in feelings of playmates when you have conflict. You can get down to their level and talk about those emotions, what children are feeling, put in that perspective taking, let children express how they feel within that situation, and ask them suggestions about how we could solve that issue. So that's really getting them to be a part of that problem solving. Do children lie and steal? Absolutely. That's a part of not understanding the outcome there. It's a very impulsive act. A lot of times lying is very interesting for young children, because I don't always we view it as a lie as an adult, but really when it comes to children, often it's a situation where it's something they want to do or would like to do, so they just say it. So for an example that I can give to you in this situation is a lot of times in the summer, children will talk about places that they'll go on vacation. So for example, you might have a child that says, I'm going to Disneyland with my family for holidays and I'm really excited. And you'll have another child that says, I'm going to Disneyland too. And that child isn't going, but you're not going to say to this child who's maybe 3 or 4 years old and is still in the process of developing a lot of skills, no, you're not going, you're lying. Because really, is it a lie? It's almost more of they want to go as well because their friend has been talking about it and it sounds really exciting and fun. I would just say back to the child, instead of lying, I would say, oh, Disneyland does sound like a really fun place. I bet you wish you could go to Disneyland too. Maybe someday your family will go to Disneyland as well. So posing it or phrasing it a little bit differently as well, in a positive light, opposed to saying something about lying, because lying is a really hard concept for children to understand. So they don't understand the nature of lies. As well as stealing, children can be very possessive. especially in those younger toddler ages, those 2 to 3-year-old children. And a lot of times, children will take a toy that they really, really like at daycare and really want to play with. And sometimes they put it in their pocket because they want to play with it at home, or they'll put it in their locker because then in the morning they know that they'll have it to play with when they enter the environment and nobody else will have that. And so we just have to explain to them in a positive way that that toy needs to stay here because yes, you like it too and you love to play with it, but so do your friends. They want to play with it too. So those are, you know, some really hard concepts to really for children to understand. And there's a lot of ways that you can work around them in positive light and not to focus on negative words or make children feel bad about those actions. Behavior problems do occur a lot in school when curriculum doesn't engage children, or when curriculum isn't developmentally appropriate for them. So children can have issues, and we do want to make sure that schools are not only looking at the curriculum that they want to present to the children, but how they're breaking that down to meet the needs of children. And often we see that trickle down curriculum where it's the same repetitive kind of thing over and over again. It's the skills that children need to develop, and we're going to present it to them. But again, you have to look at developmentally appropriate practices to teach children. So as ECEs and educators, there has to be some creativity in doing that to meet the needs of the children. Regarding social skills for children and constructing knowledge, so, you know, constructing knowledge again is a process, and children are constructing their own knowledge through interactions in their environment. And a lot of times it's through trial and error that they're learning to be successful or not. And again, that's about those experiences that we're talking about. Children gain knowledges through interactions and experiences. And so good experiences, they're going to keep going. And it's those experiences that aren't going well that they're learning from. And those are those teachable moments where we can help them. Why did that experience, why wasn't it successful, and what can we do next time to make it more positive? So we know that we want children to solve problems, and we want to do it in positive ways. And that comes into that whole saying sorry scenario that we often impose on children for negative actions. And so, you know, if a child is hurting another child, would perspective taking be more of an appropriate solution than for us to say, just say sorry to your friend because you hit them? We would really want them to put themselves in that other person's shoes and think about how it felt or how that child felt when they were hit. How would you feel if somebody hit you or took a toy away from you? So those are going to be more meaningful than words of just say you're sorry, because children do tend to, if they're told to say I'm sorry, just repeat meaningless words. So they'll do an action and then just say sorry and carry on. And that sorry, they don't mean it, it's just words. So it's not going to change how they're doing things in the future. They'll just look at sorry as being a way out of a situation and keep repeating it. So we want it to be meaningful and children to learn something from that. If they go through a problem-solving scenario and say sorry, and it comes from the heart, and they do show remorse or empathy for what they've done, that's absolutely great, because then you know that process is working, that they're understanding and they understand how that other child feels. So that's really important. Social competency is a skill that really takes time to develop. As there's a lot of adults that have trouble in different social situations and how to act and what to say. learning social skills for children starts with just basic interactions with their friends in the environment, and learning how to get along, and learning what your role is in play, and interacting with adults. And so social competency starts with just basic friendships in an early childhood center. And with social competence, learning how to enter play is a key, almost a key skill. And when we think about children and play, don't all children know how to play? And the answer to that is no, actually. And so you have to know, play is a very social process, and there is ways to enter a play. And in a lot of situations that I've dealt with young children is problems that arise because children don't know how to successfully enter a play situation. So a child may just burst in like a bull in a china store and take over the play and start grabbing toys and away from other children that are having a really positive play situation, and conflict arises. And it's because that child doesn't realize that coming into that play situation in that way is not appropriate. So we need to teach that child how to enter play, to simply use words to say, can I play? I see what you're doing is fun. Can I join you? So giving them those words to successfully enter play, then they're going to develop friendships, and they're going to be part of that play. And then children typically tend to please each other in those play situations, and a lot of learning comes out of that. Teaching perspective taking does take time, until children do come to the age where they realize that others have points of view, what's fair and what's not fair. They're really not going to understand that. So you're not going to be able to have that in that young toddlers, in that ecocentric period of time, because they view themselves as the center of the world. They cannot see anybody else as an important. They need to develop that empathy, recognize that their actions do affect other people, and realize that other people's actions do affect theirs, and develop that understanding. So until those processes come to play, perspective taking isn't going to happen. And that's all a developmental process. It takes time to develop some skills before that takes place. You're not gonna be able to sit down and teach a toddler perspective taking. They're just developmentally, their brain just isn't able to function in that way as of yet. Conflict resolution, so we do a lot of that with just simple communication using our words with preschool children, expressing, allowing children to express their emotions, labeling their emotions. Things like compromise are going to happen within those situations. It's a learning process for children. It's a bit of give and take. And that's kind of where you come together with the two children that are maybe having a conflict, and you get down to their level and you talk about it. You express emotions, label emotions, have those children talk about how they're feeling, and see what types of solutions that the children are going to come up with. It's actually really cool to be able to get to that stage of a development where they're able to negotiate, especially if it's over a toy, and that negotiation of, well, I had it first, when I'm done with it, I'll make sure that I give it to you so you can play with it. That's really a success in that. And there are times where in those situations it's just so heated and children are upset or they're just not ready. And it's okay to say to the children, you know what, I'm going to keep this toy until you're both ready to talk about it, and we come to a solution about who's going to play with it next, or if you're both able to play with it. So that's, giving them time to think about it and process it is good too. There's a lot of individual differences when you talk about behaviors, expectations, and problem solving as well, and where do those differences come into play. And so it's really thinking again about families and their cultures. You know, families have different viewpoints on things, and so when you look at children, rules, how things work all start in the home and in that process. So you're going to have some considerations as well when you're dealing with families and looking at those perspectives as well. Cultural viewpoints, socioeconomic viewpoints, gender differences, you know, where gender differences in home are maybe quite different from what's happening in the daycare environment as well. We're going to look at gender as everybody being able to do anything they want within our safe environment. So, you know, having said that, that does conclude Chapter 3 of our guidance course. If you do have any questions regarding Chapter 3, please do see your instructor. Also, if you please check in just to ensure you haven't missed any handouts or assignments pertaining to Chapter 3.